Hi, my name is Erika Holst. I'm the curator of history at the Illinois State Museum. And so, in my day job capacity, one thing I'm really passionate about is helping to share stories about the history of Illinois, especially through the use of material culture, which are the artifacts and the stuff that the people of Illinois have created and used and invested meaning behind. And one of the ways I do that in my job is by helping to curate exhibitions where we take items from the museum's collection, we research them, we interpret them, we put them in context, and we put them out for the public to see. So a recent exhibition I curated was called Fashioning Illinois, 1820 to 1900. And this exhibition really dove into the nature of historic garments that women wore in the 19th century in Illinois. And on one level, this was an opportunity to come and see some of the really fabulous garments that we had in the collection that had not been seen yet before to the public. But we wanted to go a little bit deeper than that and go into what it actually meant for women to have clothing in their lives from all stages of clothing's creation, from textile production to making clothing to caring for clothing to what happened to that clothing at the end of its useful life. And this is something that has inspired my talk, The Life Cycle of Clothing. So the talk I give talks about just that, what was involved women's labor-wise to outfit themselves and their families in the 19th century. So I talk about how women made clothes, what it was like to care for them, where the inspirations for their styles came from, and what happened to clothing when it was no longer useful, when it had been worn out. And this is such an interesting topic to reflect on from a 21st century perspective because our relationship to clothing has changed so drastically by now, even in some of our lifetimes. We've really gone from producers of clothing to consumers of clothing, and the consumption cycles have sped up and have had a really detrimental effect, not just on the people who make clothes, but on the physical environment around us. So I hope that if you come to hear my talk, you get to learn a little bit about the skills that we had in the past and what happened to those skills, and is it possible to even revive some of those skills to give us a little bit of a healthier relationship with our clothing today. So the exhibition I'm currently working on is called Growing Up X, and this focuses on the life experiences of Generation X as kids. Now, Generation X is the latchkey generation, also known as the MTV generation, also known as the forgotten generation. These are folks who were born between 1965 and 1980, roughly, a little bit fuzzy on either side. And this is the generation that's wedged between millennials on one side and boomers before them. And both of those generations are larger generations that tend to overshadow Generation X. And so the exhibition I'm working on will really dig into what it was like growing up as Generation X, kind of turning that reflective lens backwards. The members of Generation X today are between 42 and 57 years old. They're in middle age. And so it's a time to sort of look back and think about the influences that were around us in childhood. And I say us because this is the generation that I'm part of. Things that we just grew up as children sort of accepting as part of our world, and they formed us and they shaped us. And it's only now with the benefit of distance and hindsight that we can look back and think about, like, what was it like? What did it mean to us growing up in the shadow of the Cold War, where the prospect of nuclear annihilation just hung over our heads, and you knew that at any moment, you know, a nuclear bomb could just end everything? Or what did it mean for so many of us who were latchkey kids, who had parents who might be divorced, or moms who had joined the workforce? And this is before daycare was widely available. So a lot of us came home and took care of ourselves from age, 7, 8, 9 years old, coming home to an empty house and supervising yourself, having that balance of like extreme independence from a very young age, but also the lack of safety net, the lack of someone kind of watching and making sure that everything was okay, that strikes this balance between like exhilaration and terror. Or what did it mean for us growing up with the message of just say no surrounding us, where we were told from a very young age in schools, that drugs were bad, that people who did drugs were bad. And this was sort of a simplistic message that we absorbed without really understanding the nuance of why people who struggle with drug addiction got to that point in their lives, what the implications were on the criminal justice system. And beyond that, there's sort of a nostalgia aspect of it. It's what toys did we play with, and what did that mean, and how did they shape us? So all these are topics that I cover in my talk, Growing Up X, and I hope it's an opportunity for Gen Xers to come out and feel seen and share their memories. It's not just a one-way presentation. I really want to hear from people in the audience what their experiences were, what their insights were. Gen Xers themselves, I'd love it if young people came with their parents and could kind of see a little bit of the contrast between growing up now versus growing up in the 70s or 80s. I'd love for older generations, boomers, the silent generation, our parents to come out too and be part of that dialogue about what was it like to parent in that era, and what are the choices we had to make, and how did that impact our children and ourselves. So again, I hope you consider coming out, listening to that, seeing some nostalgia, reflecting, and thinking about poor Generation X, often overlooked, but hope to give it its moment in the sun. So thank you so much.